So I'm just going to see now if anybody does have any questions about the book or about anything to do with writing. That's my job tonight, is to inform you about any of those things. If you think it's a personal question, I'll answer it. If you think it's a dumb question, I've been speaking in schools for the last 7 or 8 years, and I've had some pretty interesting questions. So please feel free to ask. I will, there's no drama. It can be anything to do with the book at all. So does anyone have a question? Yes.
The very first book that you wrote, what was the incentive for you to write the very first book?
Okay. I just read the right books for me at the right time. And I was just so caught up in the world of the book that I thought that's what I want to be. I want to do that with my life. And I was 16, and it sounds almost villainous, but I said to myself, I'm going to be a writer, and nothing is going to stop me. I was always a very ambitious child. I was the youngest of 4 kids, and I was always frustrated. They always went horse riding, and I never got to go horse riding. I was too small. Finally, I can tell. If that's your biggest problem, we'd play board games, and I was too small for them. So I always knew I wanted to be something that I just felt I really wanted to do something that was important to me. And so I tried to write my first book when I was 16, and it could easily be entered into a competition for the worst book ever written. It was terrible. And I wrote 8 pages, and I can even tell you what the book is about. It was about a boy, and he had some sort of cyst in his head, and he could explode at any time. And then by page 8, there was nothing left really to write. So, you can see. Well, maybe judging by the reaction, maybe I should. But no, it was one of those things. And my point there is, I failed, and the idea was I failed, and then I thought, all right, that's clearly not how to write a book. And so the next time I wrote one, I thought, right, this is going to be chapter 1, this, and this is going to happen. Chapter 2, this is going to happen. Chapter 3, and I had 10 chapters planned out, and then I knew what was going to happen at the end, and I knew I could write a 100 to 150 page manuscript, and that was long enough to be a book. That then went on. That was when I was 18, and that got rejected by 5 publishers. Some of them just threw it in the bin. Some of them wrote me a letter saying, if you send us some stamps, we'll send you your manuscript back. That's when you know you're at the bottom of the heap, that you're not even worth the price of postage. But having said that, publishers get thousands of manuscripts from people every year, and they might publish 1 or 2 of them. So that doesn't mean it's impossible. I look at my mum and dad, and they're, my dad's a house painter, and my mum, I'm extremely, proud of both of them. And my mum's a house cleaner, and I hope don't hate me for telling people my mum. And they just worked their whole lives. And so, but obviously we didn't know anyone in publishing. We didn't know anyone in that area, but it was just, I got rejected 7 times over 3 different manuscripts, and it was my 4th one that got picked up. So there's the world's longest answer to what was my incentive. My incentive was that I just straight away had just this desire and a hunger to do this, and I didn't want to do anything else, and I don't want to be anything else. This is exactly what I want. Any other questions? Jeez, that's a bit rough. Thanks, you're throwing me a lifeline here.
I love the way you use punctuation to change the meaning of words, phrases and sentences. How deliberate is that, and how do you use punctuation?
Okay, I'll talk about punctuation and about imagery in that same sense. I meant to mention the imagery earlier. Punctuation, I found that when I was writing my first books, that all got rejected, and thankfully they did. Because now I'm going to go off on a tangent. It was the best thing that happened was I got rejected, because it showed me that I wasn't good enough, and I had to get better. Books of similar quality were getting published, and those writers had the misfortune of getting published too early, and they thought they were good. And whereas I knew I had to get better, and that's what helped me develop my own style. My original books were just copies of other people's books. It's a really good way to start. And you can't help it. Most people, when they start writing, they write something and then they go, oh, that's like that movie I just saw. That's always what happens, because everything that's been given to you, every movie you've seen, every book you've ever read, every episode of Neighbours you've had the fortune or misfortune of seeing, that is all sitting at the top of your head. Okay? That's all been given to you. And your own ideas, your own imagination is buried underneath all of that. Okay? And that period where I was getting rejected was me searching through all of that and getting down to what was mine, to my own originality. And so I just started experimenting, and I thought, what if I could just, instead of having a paragraph that's that long, what if I just made it a sentence? And then I thought, what if I just made that sentence a word? It's just got to be the right word. And and you can get criticised for that. You'll get people say, "Oh, the book's too superficially, written. The description isn't enough." But I think if you can get the right word at the right time, then all of a sudden you've just done something in one word that would normally take a paragraph. And I really like that idea. And that was how I got into using different forms of punctuation and cutting sentences in half. Even run the risk of having people say that's not a real sentence. But I thought that's a risk I'm willing to take. To get onto the idea of the imagery then, that's a similar idea. I've always wanted to use images that would captivate people, so that I wanted to write, say if there was a 100-page book, I wanted there to be one gem on every page. One of my favourite books is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I don't even love the story too much. It's pretty depressing actually. But there is a gem on every page, one tiny moment where you say, oh, that's a beautiful image. And that's the thing that I actually love the most about writing, is those things. And I've noticed that idea of the unexpected, my dad saying, son, that's brilliant. You can do that with your imagery as well. The best example I can give from The Book Thief, or that comes to mind immediately, is that I described the mayor's wife as sitting hunch drunk over at her desk. And it's a nice story in a way, but there'll be people who say, shouldn't that be punch drunk? So no, that's the whole point. Is that it's not, it's just left of that. And so the reader stops and says, oh, that, and it actually fits the character. She's been hunched like that for the last 20 years since the death of her son, all right, and it actually fits. So the idea is to have that imaginative piece of writing, but have it fit the character and have it fit the story. The great thing was, for this book, I got my dad, who is very much a scholar in a lot of ways. I got him to edit the German in the book, and he did a great job. There hasn't been a single German person who's read it who hasn't said to me, geez, the German is absolutely perfect in this book. So my dad did a great job with that, but the big problem came when he started wanting to correct the English. And that hunch drunk bit, that was one of those things that he tried to correct. And I said, look mate, you just stick to the German, and I'll do the English. And so, it's those sort of images that I really love about writing. And it's kind of, the book I'm trying to write now, which I'll finally get to at some point, like the first sequence of it, or the first sentence, was originally, and I've written this sentence at least 100 times already, just in the little notebook, which I didn't bring, of course. But the first sentence was originally, the murder arrived at 6 o'clock. I changed it to, the murder arrived at 6 o'clock, and in the history of all murderers, this one was surely the most pitiful, at least in terms of appearance. And it goes on to say, he was essentially a shambles in a suit, bent postured, and with a beach of dirt under each fingernail. And the thing I like about that the whole thing is worth it, purely because I like the beach under each fingernail. And it's those things that make me want to write. My favourite example in general is from a book by Michael called The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, where he describes a boat coming into New York Harbour, and it's a big ocean liner, and he says, the Rotterdam came into New York Harbour like a mountain wearing a deal jacket. And that is beautiful writing, and that's creativity. To me, writing is like climbing a mountain, and that's really hard. And it reminds me of going down the coast and going up Pigeon House Mountain with my dad, and we were all whinging for the first 10 minutes, and he'd say, yeah, but it'll be worth it when you get to the top. And writing's the same. It's like climbing a mountain, but there's the promise of a sand pit at the top, and all the words are just there, and all of a sudden you're just playing with them, and you write a sentence like he did. And you say, that's a writer who's sitting in the sand pit, just playing with the words. He didn't know he was going to write that day, but he did all the hard work to get up there and to be in that position. And that's what it takes, is that kind of patience and being prepared to fail. So thanks for that question. That's a good one. Any other questions? I'll read something. So yeah.
Can I just ask you whether it has been translated into German already?
It has been translated and it's coming out in Germany in March. And as one of my friends said to me, that's where you hope you did your research well.
Would you
actually
have
quite
German copies here?
Sorry?
Would you have German copies here?
I don't think so. I mean, it hasn't been produced. There have been several other countries that have already released the book. I've got some of those versions with me that I can show you. They just have different covers and so on. It's quite interesting what different countries do. But I'll tackle the German question first. I'm actually they've asked me to go up there and, hopefully I'll get out of the country all right. But it's not even that. I mean, I think in the end you've got to ask yourself, I think the book, with research-wise, I researched really hard for the book and to get everything absolutely right. My mum and dad, both German and Austrian, they were always bugging me about how long it was taking to write it. And I said, I've got to get the research right, that bombing. And then my dad said, just make it up. I said, no, but one of the main reasons you do research is to keep the lunatics at bay. And I mean that quite seriously. I have the kids stealing apples in the book. And one of the reasons I went to Munich, one of the smaller reasons, was to make sure I got the apples right and to research the seasonal habits of apple trees. Because I don't want Bill from the South Australian Apple Growing Association writing me a letter saying, yeah, those apples wouldn't have been right. That is what people do. That letters, that just question something, and that's what and that's all just part of the job. But yeah, in Germany, it's coming out, and I think if your heart was in the right place when you were writing the book, and in a way, this book, one of the things that has made it stand out, apart from probably Death being the narrator, is that it actually shows ordinary German people, and it's written from their point of view, and the idea that there were German people, there were pockets of German people who hid their Jewish friends and associates and business partners, and so I wanted to tell that story. And I think as long as people understand that and realise that, and I think it's overwhelmingly a positive book. And even though nearly everyone dies with it, no one has ever said to me, well, when Death narrates a book, people need to die. It stands to reason. But no one has ever come to me and said that book depressed me. And while I'm at this point, I want to thank some of the people who've said to me tonight, even as I was coming in, that they said really nice things about the book, and then they tried to get their friends to read it. I always say, I'm really sorry, because it's a hard book to give to your friends, because they say, well, what's it about? And you say, well, it's set in Nazi Germany, it's narrated by Death, nearly everyone dies, and it's 580 pages long, you'll love it. So at the end of the day, that's why I can't believe all the things that have happened with the book, and that it's coming out in Germany as well. It's going to be a really true test, so yeah, we'll see what happens. Just quickly on that, I can, since I lug them here, I can briefly show what other people have done or other countries have done with it. This is a French copy of it, which I really love that cover. It's it's more what you'd expect from a book called The Book Thief. It's really beautiful. This one, actually, it was given two covers in England. It was given this exact cover for younger readers, and it was given this cover for adults. So there you've got Death as the Grim Reaper, even though in the book Death says things like, if you really want to know what I look like, go and find a mirror. and there was this idea that death was really just a part of us, and we're a part of it. And that's why death referred to the trees and the clouds and everything as who, like the sky, who was white and blue and magnificent, or the trees who are standing over on the right. It's because I wanted him to view all of those things as colleagues, and as if we're all in this together and all part of the same thing. And so I was a bit disappointed when I saw this cover, but since then I've really taken to it. I really like it. So that's the British one. This is the Brazilian one, which is, again, more looking at the idea of, it's probably death there. And but they've got really beautiful things and set out things really nicely as well. And lastly, this is the American one. And people always hate this one. I kind of like it though, purely because you have to get to part 8 till you figure out what they're talking about on the cover, and the fact that there are dominoes on the cover. And people have actually pointed out to me that those dominoes are in the shape of a swastika. And so it's a bit more cryptic, and I like the idea that there's a book called The Book Thief and dominoes on the cover, and all that sort of thing. So it's just been interesting to see the way different people have done it, and so we'll see what German people have to say when it comes out there. They're using this cover in German. So, anyway. Any other questions? There was another hand up.
Were you always a good reader from a young age?
Yeah, because my mum and dad immigrating to Australia couldn't really speak much English, and I think so they were always really interested in us becoming good readers and good speakers and all that sort of thing. So they were always, we had every Dr. Seuss book that there was, and I've still got them, and so we grew up really loving reading. And of course, I drifted away a little bit in my early teenage years, and then came back to it and rediscovered everything that I'd loved about it in the first place. So I wasn't a superb English student. I was good. I was in the highest class, but it wasn't until year 11 and 12 that I started really getting better. And surprisingly, I did much better in essays than I did in creative writing. And I think that's a really valuable skill because it helps you to plan out your story and to organise it. Yeah. Any other final questions before we finish up? Yes?
Do you plan that you go ahead as you were saying, or do you write the idea just follow?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Do I plan before I write, or does it all just sort of flow out? A lot of writers tend to say that they'll just start and then see where it all takes them. They're lying. You've got to have some sort of plan. I've got it in my head usually. I see a book like a race, and there are all these checkpoints that you've got to run through, and they're your best moments in the book. All right. For example, Rudy painting himself black and being Jesse Owens, that was one of my checkpoints that I needed to run through and to get it right. What actually happens is you plan these things out, you've got them in your head. What I do is I actually write chapter headings over and over and over again, and just to get them in the right sequence and to get them right, and that's how I can visualise what's going to happen in that chapter. I wish I could just write a book that was chapter headings, I just love writing chapter headings, and so I do it in those sorts of ways. The thing is though, when you have that in your head, you've still got to have an element of flexibility, and so I'll have those points in my head, and then you might get to one of those points and say, actually that should have happened back there, or that should happen earlier, or maybe it happens down here. It's not quite the same. In this book, Liesl originally was going to get arrested for stealing, and I wrote the whole book referring to it. But then she was in the original prologue was called Homesick for a Prison Cell, and it is now called A Mountain Range of Rubble. And that was because I got to the end of the book and I knew that that wasn't the right thing to do anymore, and so I changed it to be that words actually saved her rather than imprisoned her in some way, and it was staring at me all along. So I just needed to adjust the checkpoints in the book and get it all working as I wanted it to make sense in the way I wanted it to. So yes, plan, but be flexible as well, because you get your best ideas when you're sitting down and writing. If you want to write a book, don't go and walk along the beach. Okay? Sit down at your desk and write. That's where you get your best ideas. It's like, think of it this way. If you wanted to get better at running, you wouldn't sit on the couch and think about running. You run. It's the same with writing. You've got to sit there and write, and that's when it all starts to come to you. So that's exactly, I guess, how I feel about planning. Any other final things? Yeah.
You might have answered my question, but do you always know how your books are going to end when you start?
The ending is something that I usually think of very early. That's usually one of the reasons for writing the book. It's one of your big points to get through. And so I usually think of the ending very early, but the funny thing is, in just about, at least I've written 5 books that have been published, and I know in The Book Thief is an example, and also I know the second book I wrote, Fighting Ribbon Wolf, the endings both changed as I was writing the books. So in that previous book that I mentioned, there was going to be a chapter where the 2 boys carried their mother home from this particular, where she got injured, and in the end I stopped the book short of that because enough had already happened, and as I said, I changed things for the book thief as well. So I see the ending, but I'm flexible with that as well. The ending of my new book I know has already changed, and I haven't started writing. It's because it's taken so long to get started. Any other final questions before we finish? You probably all nearly had about enough. Yes?
Do you not have any input into what you cover?
I get input, but it's not really input, if you know what I mean. You probably don't, so I'll explain it. In this cover, when I first got it, the Australian version, it was just the blue and the grey and and all of that, and I said to them, geez, it looks a bit sort of pale. Maybe we could use some sort of red. And it was like someone went into a back room, got a paintbrush, and said, right, there's your red. And so, in that case, but I really liked that because if I hadn't asked that question, it wouldn't be there. And that could be blood, but it could also be paint. Just as that figure could be death, but it could also be Lisa, the book thief. So, yeah, I like the ambiguity of that.
So do you think it's okay? Like, do they show you?
No, not really. It's a bit like, same with the back cover writing. The publisher will always try to get you to write it because they don't want to do it either. And then I'll write something and I'll almost deliberately do a really bad job because it's my job to write the book and it's their job to sell it. And so I don't want them to promote the book on the back. And so I wrote a thing and they said, well, we'll handle this. Did you really, do you want someone to buy it or not? It's the same with the covers. They ask for your input, but really, I'm more trustworthy of them. Who's to say, American people like this cover. They like it much more than they like this one. Okay, and same with British people really like this one, and so leave that to the publisher. They sell thousands and thousands of books, and I just write them, and so I don't know what sells and what people like in that regard. I just focus on what my job is, and that's write the book and get the characters right. And if you do that, the book will take care of itself. My favourite book cover is The Catcher in the Rye. The one I've got is yellow and it says The Catcher in the Rye on it, and that's all it has. I really love those old style sort of books. Any last questions? Yes?
Have you had any interest regarding turning your books into films?
Yeah, I have. I had some for my previous book, The Messenger, for a TV series. And film and TV is even more fickle than writing. The Book Thief has been signed up. It's been optioned by Fox 2000 or something in America, and that company made Walk the Line and a few other things that was pretty prominent, and so they've had it for 1.5 years and nothing much has happened. They apparently have now found a writer for it. I don't want to write the screenplay myself because I think it's actually like most writers, when they then go on to write the screenplay, they have this nightmarish experience. And the reason is this: that one is that there are a lot of fingers in the pie with movies, and there's the money's coming from here. They want this to happen. The money's coming from over there. They want that to happen. And there are all these people with their fingers in it. And in writing, it's usually just you and your publisher, you and your editor. And the other reason writers have problems is that they think they can do it. It's a totally different art form. I'm not arrogant enough that I would think I can turn around and write a screenplay in 1 year or 1.5 years. It's taken me 16 years of work and failing and honing my own style to be able to write this book. What makes me think, or have the audacity to think that I can turn around and just do a screenplay and master a new art form in 1 year? it's not going to happen. So let someone else, let a professional do it who has a good track record. So they've got someone writing it now, and if it gets made, great. If not, no worries. I mean, I've been lucky enough. And also, the other thing, people always say, yeah, but what if they butcher it? What if they screw your book up? And it's usually readers who are more distressed about that, because the writer thinks, well, at least everyone will say the book's better. And not only that, and if they make a really great movie, then it's only going to help your book. So, I'm happy to see what happens there, and if it happens, great. If not, it's fine. All right. Any last one now?
A lot of those books are just finished. Are they abridged or
They're not abridged. Every different translations as well. There's, as far as I know, the translations of books of my books, I've been really lucky. I've had readers of this book now write to me from each country that it's come out in, and they've all said that. They've always said nice things. So no, they're not abridged. Even the audio version is not abridged, so someone has to listen for 13 and a half hours to through. So I guess that's how long it takes to read it. Not the thinner paper is only in the larger books. Anything else that anyone wants to know? Yes, good on you.
Just about the title, did you have trouble creating it or thinking up of a title to just pop into your head, or
the
take you a
title
long
of the
time?
book thief?
Yeah, the book thief.
It's interesting you say, or that you asked that question. My publisher here in Australia, when I delivered the book, I got moved from, I was a young adult author before this, and I got moved up to Picador, which is part of the publishing house, but it's more the literary end. And they said to me, we're thinking maybe you should change the title. And I had to fight, really, for this title. I also had to fight for the little inclusions that say, here is a small fact, and so on. And also for the illustrations that are in there, which hadn't been drawn yet. And they just questioned it because they're that part of the publishing house is there to be literary and conservative and high-end literature. And I said to them in the end, and these sort of discussions need to come up, I said, well, why don't we just take out everything that's original about the book and then just put it out? And I wrote them an essay saying the illustrations need to be there. I want death to talk in that way, saying here is a small fact, and it has to be called The Book Thief. And the reason I came up with the title was, the three ideas that merged to make this book was, one, the stories of my parents, two, the idea of a girl stealing books in Nazi Germany, and three, the idea of death narrating. The idea of a book thief, I originally wrote a first page of a girl stealing books in Sydney, in modern day Sydney. And then I just thought, what if I put her back into this Nazi Germany era? And then it hit me half an hour later, that's actually perfect. Here you've got a country that's just been cultivated by words. You've got a country that has just done the unthinkable, all due to words. I mean, Hitler did it all with words, with propaganda and everything. And this idea of a girl who stole the words back was what made me realise, this book is The Book Thief. And so it's just a culmination of little ideas here and there that resulted in it being the book that it is, with the title. Okay, I think everyone's nearly had, well, if you haven't had enough,